Hey everybody, and welcome. My name is Richard Cooper. I'll be your presenter today, and we're going to be reviewing your debt consolidation options in Canada. This is brought to you by TotalDebtFreedom.ca, and I'm going to have to ask for your forgiveness off the bat because I've got a spring cold, so my voice isn't at its best, but I'll do my best. Grab a pen and a piece of paper because you're probably going to want to take a few notes, and I know there's going to be questions. A lot of the times the questions come up as I'm going through the slides, so I'll do my best to get to as many as possible, but I'll take care of most of those near the end. So let's dive right in. So who am I? I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I got started, I guess, in the debt collection industry in the early 90s, and I took a package around 2003 and I went home. I was really fed up with the collection industry and the way they treated employees and the people that they were collecting from. So around 2003-04, I put together this debt negotiation settlement strategy, which helped people get out of debt in 3 years for less than what they owe. And I've learned a lot about the credit card industry, the debt collection cycle, what options are out there. So I'm going to talk about those options today. Just, the background on me and who I am, it's something that I've done for the last 10 years. We've been featured in the Star, Rogers Television. I've been quoted in articles in Maclean, CBC Radio, News Talk 1010, Breakfast Television. CADA, which is the Canadian Association of Debt Assistants, I'm the chairman for the organization, and for the last year and a half, there's been this bill in Ontario Parliament called Bill 55, and the way it was initially written was unfair for consumers, so we spent time trying to make sure that credit card companies didn't get the best of people. So that was an interesting journey. You can see me here with Erica Johnson from CBC's Marketplace, and you've probably seen that show. It's that watchdog that exposes, scams and ripoffs. And they came into my office this day. You can see the crew here, and they were just getting some quotes and stories on some of the dirty tricks that collection agencies use. I'm also an author, and on Amazon, I've got 2 books as Kindles. The first one I wrote was titled Enough is Enough, the DIY Debt Settlement Guide Your Creditors Don't Want You to Know About, and that turned into a bestseller in the personal finance section. I also followed it up with a short novelette called The Debt Consolidation Cure, and that breaks down some of your options in a little more detail. You can see we have a YouTube channel, over 100,000 views. There's some great information there if you want to check that out. And I guess first and foremost, I'm a father. I've got shared custody of my daughter. I went through a pretty nasty divorce a few years ago, so I get that bad things can happen to good people. It's just a fact of life. So who we are as a company, we set this up in 2004. Sorry, I'm gonna have to take a sip of water here and there, so just bear with me. And most of my management is former collection industry insiders. We've settled over $80 million in credit card debt at an average of just under 40 cents on the dollar. The business is accredited and rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. But most importantly, this thing is about creating raving fans. And most people will say to me right away when they don't know what the heck does that mean, Rich? And it's pretty straightforward. It's under promise, over deliver. There's a book I read about 5-6 years ago that was called Creating Raving Fans. And it really stuck with me because I came from the collection industry that dealt with credit card debt, and I really didn't like the way they browbeat consumers, the way they treat employees. So I wanted to make a point of making people excited in an otherwise tough industry to do business in. So you can see this wall here is in our lunchroom. Actually, this is a vinyl I put up, and many of our clients have come in and they started signing the wall over the years. And putting little love notes in there, which is interesting because about 99% of our business is done over the phone. This is a really cool quote that I like. Life is too short to be in debt. It most certainly is. So today we're going to talk about what options exist in Canada. Hopefully we can shed some light on this for you. We have consolidation loans, debt roll-up plans, trustee plans, which are bankruptcy and consumer proposals, credit counseling, and the debt negotiation approach. Now, at the end of this, we're going to share an exclusive free offer. The problem is debt. The good news is you do have options, starting with your consolidation loan. So this is something that most people look for when they want to get out of debt. The problem is they leave it too late. I'll talk about why in a minute. But a consolidation loan is a new loan granted by your bank or creditor to bring all of your monthly payments into one payment rather than the multiples, making things simpler. You usually want to try to do this to make a lower monthly payment. It doesn't always work that way, but the advantages are it gives you one payment versus the multiple payments, and if it's done by your bank, the interest rate should be lower, and it doesn't have any impact on your credit. Now the disadvantages are there is no reduction in what you owe. You're still going to be paying your interest. You're going to be paying the full amount that you owe, and interest can be pretty high. The reason why I mentioned earlier is you want to deal with your bank. You want to start and end with your bank because they'll get you the lowest interest rate. If you have equity in your property, a debt consolidation through a refinance would probably be the best way to get the lowest interest rate. But I've seen people get stuck in consolidation loans as high as 39%. I put in brackets there Dale's story. If you go to the YouTube channel and type in Dale's Total Debt Freedom story, you'll see what I'm talking about. He basically got stuck in this endless cycle, paying huge amount of interest going nowhere. So you have to be very careful with these types of loans. Like I mentioned, most people leave it a little bit too late when they try to get consolidation help. So it's not the best fit for everybody. So you want to start at your bank and end there. If they can't help you, there are other options that are better than paying 39%. A debt roll-up plan is one of them, and it's pretty straightforward. You're going to pay considerably more than your minimum, about 20 to 30% more. And you pay that monthly until each debt is paid off. Now, you see people talk about, well, tackle the lowest balance first because you'll pay that off quick and you'll feel like you've had a win. And you hear other people say, well, pay the highest interest credit card first because that's costing you a lot of money. You can decide for yourself what works best for you. You've got your statements and you know who you owe. I'll tell you a story about my friend Sam. About 20 years ago, he racked up about 25 grand in credit card debt. He got way more credit than he could manage. He used it irresponsibly, but he didn't want to file bankruptcy. So he figured the best thing to do was just to really cut back on his expenses and pay way more than his minimums monthly. And he got out of debt in about 4 or 5 years. It did work for him. So here's me and Gail Vass-Oxley. You probably know her from TV shows like Till Death Do Us Part and Princess. She's no longer she's on TV, she's retired, but she still writes books, and I know she's on radio on AM 1010. But you've seen her talk about these jars, which is basically a debt roll-up plan. There's a guy in the States named Dave Ramsey that uses envelopes as a strategy. Doesn't matter what you use, it's still a debt roll-up plan. So whether you use jars or envelopes or just a budgeting guide, it's fairly straightforward. Just grab a pen and a piece of paper, figure out who you owe. If you can free up some extra cash flow and pay down about 20 to 30% more monthly on your minimums, then you'll start to see yourself get out of debt. So you're in control and it doesn't bruise your credit. Disadvantages are you're going to pay a considerable amount of interest because credit card interest is 19%, up to about 30% if it's a retail store card. You've got to have lots of surplus income to make those extra payments, and you're not going to see a reduction in your balance. So that's another disadvantage. Okay, moving on. Trustees with bankruptcy and consumer proposals. So if you've got a lot of time in your board right now, you can go online and you can download the Bankruptcy Insolvencies Act. It's a detailed piece of federal regulation that governs a trustee. Now, a trustee is a court-appointed agent to your creditors. They dissolve your assets, they assess your income and debt, and they return money back to your creditors until you're discharged on what you owe. Now, most trustees started out their life as CAs, which are chartered accountants. And accountants are bean counters. They're really good with numbers. So that's how they got into the insolvency business. They got themselves licensed as a trustee and they move on to this sort of industry. There's always work for them. There's advantages to a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal. Your calls will stop 100% of the time. Creditors can't sue you. It does reduce your debt. Again, it's based on these bankruptcy insolvency tables, on your income, what your assets are. It does lower your debt though. And you can resolve Canada Revenue Agency debt, CRA debt. So if you're a business owner and you have taxes from your business or HST owed and you're personally liable for it, you can include that in the program. So that is a pretty strong advantage there too. Now, there are disadvantages. I mentioned earlier that they're a court-appointed agent to your creditors, so they are actually working for your creditors even though you pay them. It's bad for your credit. Everybody knows that. You must be insolvent to do bankruptcy or consumer proposal. And what insolvency means is that you owe more than you own. So if you owe $30,000, you're going to need to have assets less than that to be insolvent. So if you have greater amount in assets, if you owe 100,000, like if your house has 100 grand in equity in it, let's say, and you've got another 20 grand sitting aside somewhere, that $30,000 in debt doesn't make sense to go to a trustee because you're not insolvent. You've got some assets. So you have to be in well over your head. I usually recommend to people, if you owe, 5 times more than what you own, so if your assets are about 10 grand, but you owe 50 grand or so in credit card debt, then talking to a trustee is probably a good idea. Also, another disadvantage is all non-exempt assets go to your creditors. So in the legislation, because this is federally regulated, there's certain things which are exempt and non-exempt. So I'll give you a couple examples. If you're a tradesman, and let's say you're a mechanic or a plumber or an electrician or something, you've got tools of the trade, and you need to hold on to those tools of trade to have household income, obviously. So I think it's about $5,000 or $6,000. You can keep those, and those are exempt from your bankruptcy. If you have an older vehicle and it's worth less than about 6 grand, you can keep that, and that's excluded from the bankruptcy. So there's certain exemptions out there. Let's move on to the disadvantages of a consumer proposal. So this is a major disadvantage that I find, is that trustees make 20% of every payment that goes to your creditors. So think about that for a second. Remember, these guys are bean counters or chartered accountants. So what's going on in their head is they look at tables, your income, your assets, your liabilities, all that stuff. And their job is basically to dive down into everything and find what they can to pay back your creditors. If they're going to make 20% of every payment that goes to your creditors, remember, these guys are business people. They don't work for free. They have families to support. They're going to go looking for every dime they can because they make 20% of every dollar that they send your creditors. So I think it's a disadvantage that they're compensated in a fashion where the more they get back, the more they make. 51% of your creditors must accept a proposal, otherwise you can be forced into bankruptcy. And the way it basically works, it's a settlement proposal and it goes to your creditors, and 51% take it, then it's binding and you make the payments for 60 months, for 5 years. If it's declined, you can be forced into a bankruptcy. There's more details to that. You can talk to a trustee about how that works, but basically if 51% take it, you're good to go. If not, you could be in trouble. All non-exempt assets are paid to your creditors also in a proposal, and we already talked about that in the last slide. And the program lasts for up to 5 years. Now, the reason why I say that's a disadvantage is, a trustee will say, well, that's an advantage. It's good because it makes for easy payments. But in a bankruptcy, you're discharged somewhere around the year mark. I think it's 9 to 14 months. In a consumer proposal, most of them run for 60 months, so 5 years. The longer it's on your credit, the more damage it's going to do to your credit. So I would argue that a consumer proposal is probably worse for your credit than a bankruptcy. Now, an interesting thing to note is many trustees advertise a consumer proposal as the best way to avoid bankruptcy. And I think that's BS. I really do, because the truth of the matter is they make more money for less work. And because the program lasts longer, it does more damage to your credit. So it's a pretty good deal for them as a trustee, not so much for the average consumer. The best way to find out what the best solution for you would be is obviously to talk to a trustee, give them your scenario, because they do a free consultation, and you'll understand the cost advantages on bankruptcy versus a proposal. Because again, it's all based on government tables. It's cookie cutter stuff. So that's a summary on what a trustee can do for you. Let's talk about credit counseling. So you're often referred to these credit counselors by banks, and their job is to reduce the interest rate and structure monthly payments back, usually over about 5 years. Now, there's a reason why creditors refer you to credit counselors. It's because they want you on their plan. If you can't afford to do it on what the statements say, they want you on that plan rather than a bankruptcy or a negotiation or a debt roll-up, because they get a good deal of their money back. The thing with credit counselors is the idea, the concept was great. When they set this up a long time ago, I think it's about 50 or 60 years ago, The intent was good. The government wanted to do something to help people in debt, and it evolved over time. And I think around the late 80s or early 90s, I think it was the Harris government in Ontario that made the change. And basically, they pulled the funding out. And when they pulled the funding to cover the cost of credit counseling out, somebody needed to step up and cover the costs, otherwise the industry would go away. So can you guess who's got a ton of money and who might have stepped up to cover the cost of credit counseling? The banks did. So most of the cost of credit counseling is covered by the very people that you owe. So there are advantages. The calls stop, and you do get a reduction in the interest rate. So if you're paying 19% on your credit card, you might find yourself paying 6, 7, or 8%. Now the disadvantages are they work for your creditors now because most of their compensation comes from there. There's a high minimum monthly payment. There's no reduction in what you owe, and it does a considerable amount of damage to your credit. It looks the same to creditors as what a consumer proposal would be if you were running it for 5 years, so it's not good for your credit. Now this is a pie chart that I took from an annual report from a large nonprofit credit counselor in Canada. And yes, they're not-for-profit, but let's look at where the money comes from. You can see that only 23% and change comes from you as a client. That's the orange side of the pie chart. The rest of it comes from the people that you owe or the collection agencies. They're not looking after your best interest. They're in bed with the people that you owe. And I can prove it. If you go to the About Us section of many credit counseling websites, they have a board of directors that they disclose. And on the board of directors sits many bankers. And they're basically running the show. They're telling the nonprofit agencies what they can and can't do since most of their funding comes from that angle. So you need to be careful when you consider credit counseling. I personally don't recommend it to anybody. I think if you're in well over your head, a trustee is a good person to talk to see if it's a good fit. If you can't consolidate at your bank or debt roll-up isn't affordable to you, we'll talk about debt negotiation on the next slide. That's one of the better ones, I think. But credit counselors, I rarely refer anybody there. Maybe if they have a small amount of debt, less than $5,000 or $6,000, it might be worth looking at. But you have to consider how they work if you're going to look at getting debt relief from them, because it is a fairly expensive plan and they are working for the creditors. Let's talk about debt negotiation. So get you debt free by structuring a budget that you can actually work with. One of the things that people I find often do is they get on this merry-go-round of debt and they just go round and round in circles trying to make payments, and it doesn't work out and they're not seeing the balance reduced. And there's a simple solution to that, and I'm just going to say it because I think it's funny. Just get off. Just get off the merry-go-round. It's stop doing what you've been doing. If it's not working, then make a big change. And the negotiation or settlement approach does that. So you get on a budget that you can afford. It reduces your debt, your principal and interest, by 50 to 75%, even as much as 80%. And the time frame can be as quick as a couple months if you have the resources to do it right away, or you can enroll for the 2-3 year program and do it on a monthly strategy. Now, it's based on your resources, but ultimately you're in control. And this is the only program where there's an advocate in your corner. The creditors have trustees under the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act. They have the credit counselors in their back pocket because they're funding, much of the programs. If you can't consolidate your debt at the bank, or a debt roll-up plan isn't affordable to you, this is definitely something that you want to take a look at because it does work very well. The advantages are you can reduce a debt by about 80% in some cases. There's a few creditors in Canada that we routinely settle at a very low amount. And it's all based on your financial hardship. Sometimes it's a lower amount, sometimes you're going to see higher amounts. But at the end of the day, you're going to get out of debt for less than what you owe. The monthly budget is affordable, you're in control, it's very easy on your credit, and it's the only program that advocates for you. Speaking about the credit thing, I'm going to tell you about 2005. I was approached by the mortgage community, Canadian Association of Mortgage Professionals, and I wrote this continuing education course on maintaining this designation for mortgage agents. So long story short, I looked at some credit reports over a span of about 12 to 14 months of people that were into a debt settlement or debt negotiation plan. And one thing that I found that was fairly common was everybody saw an increase in their credit score. I'm going to say that again. They saw an increase in their credit score when they were having their debt settled. You don't see that in a bankruptcy or consumer proposal. You don't see it in credit counseling. It's only in this program that I saw the credit score go up because the debts were settled over time, and that made the score go up. It's also a private program, so it doesn't register like credit counseling or a consumer proposal or bankruptcy would. So it's good in that sense. Now there's disadvantages. You're going to get some calls. There's different strategies on dealing with that. We've got some very effective ones that actually stop calls, but you should expect your phone to ring at some point until the debt's settled. Of course, once it's settled, the calls will stop. Some creditors can take legal action. Now, it's important to note that you've signed a card member's agreement, and you're going to have breached that at some point when you're no longer able to meet those terms of minimum payment. When you start falling behind, when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul to try to take care of the balances, if you're not paying down, the balance, you've basically breached it. At that point, they can demand full payment. So you will see some creditors take legal action. Now, the cool thing about our program here at TDF is we actually have a paralegal defense program which is included. So we're very successful at negotiating settlements through the court system. At the end of the day, all a plaintiff's claim is the whole point of registering the legal action is to try to force a settlement on the debt, which is really the whole point of a negotiation approach anyway. So it's not that big of a deal when you've got this paralegal defense plan in there. Now, this is something that you can do yourself, but it's tough. That's one of the reasons why I wrote that book for people that are do-it-yourselfers. So if you're more of a do-it-yourselfer, it's probably worth grabbing it. It's less than $10 on Amazon as a Kindle. You can do anything yourself, really. I mean, I could change my transmission if I had a hoist, the tools, and the know-how, but ultimately I'm going to pay a professional to do something like that. So it's not that easy to do yourself. Let me show you a couple of negotiation letters, some settlement letters that we've got for clients. We've got a current amount on this one of just over 12 grand, and they paid about $3,300. So they had a considerable savings here. And you'll see they always have these terms and conditions, and we've blacked out their private information because we don't want to show that on these slides here. This is another one where they owed $11,272. And they paid $29.93. And you'll see here they've got all these terms and conditions. You need an FCA and proof of income, and it has to be done by this date and made by certified funds. So these are all things that we champion for you. We take care of arranging the settlement for you so that all you have to worry about is making the payment. So in this case, the client saved $8,279. And let me show you one final one here. They owed $72.82 and they paid $1,800. So they saved $5,400. This is real. There are very real savings realized by people settling debt. It does work very well. All that you really need is the will to get out of debt, at least $10,000 in credit card debt, and that's pretty much it. If you want to get out of debt and you're serious about it, this is something that is definitely worth considering. So I'll take some questions now. Let me just see what we got here. I got a bankruptcy question. Can you go bankrupt on student loans? Yes and no. They changed the regulations. I'm not sure what the current ones say, but I know that they changed them not too long ago to say that you have to be out of school for 10 years to file bankruptcy on student loans. But you should talk to a trustee more specifically about that one. Excuse me. When do you contact my creditors? Good question. So I guess the short answer to that is we contact them at the appropriate time to negotiate. In some scenarios, it's very early on in the program. We have some creditors that we settle with the original creditor and we get a really good deep discount. And there's other creditors where you want it to settle when it goes to an agency. The strategy is different. There's so many different creditors in Canada, and they handle things differently, even sometimes in different regions, like Western region versus Eastern region. The good thing is we've been doing this for over 10 years, so we understand the cycle, we understand the best time to settle and when that is. But the shorter answer is we basically contact them when you've got sufficient funds to settle and it's appropriate to get the best deal. Oh, here's a cool one. How do my creditors get paid? So we're doing the negotiating, you're doing the paying. Basically, we're going to do all the work to structure it, make sure that we've got it in writing and it's a good deal. And once we're happy with it collectively, we'll give you the instructions and you go and make the payment. So if you owe your bank money on a Visa, you're going to walk into the bank and make your payment, get your receipt, done deal. If it's a retail store like a Home Depot or something, you can just go in there, you'll make the payment at the customer service desk, you'll get the receipt, and it's a done deal. So it's fairly straightforward. We're going to walk you through all the steps exactly how it works, but we don't control the negotiation money, you do. That's why we create the budget so that you've got new savings habits that you learn. That's one of the things people actually talk about a lot when they're in our program is they love learning how to save and budget money. So you're the person that makes the payment. And I'm going to take one more question. I'm sorry, but I'm losing my voice here, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. Is there a guarantee? Yes. Excuse me. There is a guarantee. Aside from death and taxes and probably getting a cold at some point in your life, we do guarantee this, that you'll get out of debt for less than what you owe on the day that you start the program. So if you owe $30,000 and you get into a 3-year program, you're going to get out of debt for way less than what you owe on the day that you start 3 years later. Now, like I mentioned, most people see a savings of around 40 to 60%. Most people pay about 40 cents on the dollar. So you will see a fairly deep discount in what you owe. So it's considerably less than what you owe. So there is a very, very good savings in that respect. You don't see that with credit counseling. You definitely don't get it with a consolidation loan or a debt roll-up strategy, although you want to try to tackle those first if you do have the cash flow and the bank will approve you. So I hope that answers a few questions. I know that I missed a bunch, but what you can do is you can call in. As a free bonus today, we're offering a free debt evaluation. You can call in and speak to a senior debt consultant. So just grab a pen and jot down the number. It's 855-449-DEBT or 3328. And you can take as much of our time as you need. If you need to talk to us for an hour over the phone, no problem. We'll certainly make that time available to you to see what solution might be best. Everybody's debt situation is very, very different. We've been doing this for a long time, and it's very rare that we see two identical situations. They're so different. So to better understand what might work best for you, the best thing to do is to pick up the phone and give us a call and ask the questions and see what might work. If you're in well over your head, we might recommend a trustee to you and send you off in that direction. If you have sufficient equity in your home, for example, then talking to a mortgage specialist might be the better way to get out of debt and consolidating that way. If we think that our solution might be a better approach, we can certainly help you out with that, and we'll give you a free quote that way. So just jot down the number. It's 855-449-3328, and I'll have that up again on the last slide. The second free bonus that we're giving that I mentioned is worth a considerable amount. It's worth $1,300 almost. And if you enroll into the debt negotiation program that we're offering this month, you're going to get an exclusive credit repair coaching service for free. Now, I've already told you that our program is far kinder to your credit than the other stuff that's out there. But what we're going to do is we're going to help you improve your credit score once you've graduated. The world works on credit to buy a house and get a mortgage. You want the best interest rate possible to save money. Oftentimes when you're getting a car, you're going to lease or finance. Not many people have a good chunk of cash to go and buy a car now. So good credit will save you money. So after you've graduated, we're going to coach you on how to repair your credit. And that's a considerable value. That's something that most companies would charge in excess of $1,300 to you to do. We're going to add this as a free added service, and nobody else out there, as far as I'm aware, does that. Connect with us. Again, the number, 855-449-3328. Just give us a call. And again, take up as much of our time as you need. We're all about creating raving fans here, and we want to make sure that you're totally thrilled with any interaction that you have with us. So please take a few moments. Don't be shy. Don't be ashamed. Nobody gets up in the morning and just says, right, I'm just not going to pay my bills. It's always, life happens. You get divorced. I know personally, it's tough. You try to start a business that doesn't work out. we've seen people come into the program where they've been injured and they can't work and they've lost an income or they got sick. Whatever the reason is, we understand. You're not going to be judged. We're here to help you. You can check out the website, totaldebtfreedom.ca. You can also email us at info@totaldebtfreedom.ca. We have a YouTube channel with tons of videos. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of good resources there. So just search for Total Debt Freedom there, and you can learn more about the company and our culture there as well. And if you want to connect with us on Facebook, just type in totaldebtfreedom.ca and you'll find us there. So I think that's all the gas I have in my tank. My voice is about gone. I think I've lost it. I hope that shed some light on what your options are with dealing with debt. And I'm going to try to get some rest and get better because this cold needs to go away. Okay, so thanks everybody. Have a nice day. See you later.